Hi, everyone. My name is Kate or Katya. This is my mom, Isana. Say hi, Mom.
Hi, everybody.
I'm the board president of COJECO, and it's the Jewish charity of ex-Soviet Russian-speaking Jews in the New York and New Jersey area. Many of our members come from Ukraine. Many of us still have family and friends there, and we're so happy you could join us today to learn how to make my mama's borsch, and she makes a really good borsch, and I'm gonna make Pampushki. I'm gonna start with the Pampushki because I think they take longer, and then we'll go back and forth between making the Pampushki, which is Ukrainian garlic bread rolls. They're really tasty, and then the borsch. So the key here is to have a yeasty dough. So to make a yeasty dough, you have to make the yeast bloom because it's actually alive. So we're gonna take a cup of warm milk, and I have a KitchenAid stand mixer. So it makes my life easy. So I hope you'll forgive me for using it today, but you can absolutely do this in a bowl with your hands. And frankly, I do that probably half the time, and half the time I use my stand mixer. Camera, can we move a little bit to the left? Okay, so to make yeast bloom, we want to put everything into a bowl. So in addition to my warm milk, I need sugar. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of sugar. It's not going to make my Pampushki sweet, but what it's going to do is activate my yeast. And I'm using rapid rise, which is the same thing as instant yeast. And the reason you want this is because it's a fluffy, yeasty dough. So I get my yeast in with my milk, with my sugar, and I am going to, it's not in the recipe, but one of the tricks that I do when I make bread doughs is I usually add just a tablespoon of flour from whatever flour I was going to add in order to help the yeast bloom. And then just with a whisk, I'm gonna make sure that we mix it well. And so the key here is to mix it well and then leave it alone. We're not gonna touch it for about 10 to 15 minutes. So one of the things to remember when you're working with yeast is expiration dates are very important. If the yeast is expired, it's not gonna bloom. And sometimes it's not expired and it still doesn't bloom. And then you have to throw away the batch you've made and start again with a new yeast. And the reason is that if the yeast doesn't bloom, and by bloom, I mean, I will show you, maybe the camera can zoom in on what it looks like now, so that in 10 minutes, I can show you what it looks like when it blooms or it foams. It actually gets like a cap on it. And that's how you know that your bread is going to rise. So we're not professional cinematographers here, but you can see I've just mixed the milk, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of flour, and the yeast. And it just looks like a regular mixed substance. So we're gonna come back to this in 10 minutes and you'll see the difference in how it looks. So now I'm gonna turn it over to my mom. I'm just gonna start with the borscht.
Okay. I asked everybody to cook the broth. To cook the broth with beef short ribs first. You could have used beef short ribs or you could have used beef shank. Both are good. Now, there are many recipes for borscht. Different parts of Ukraine have their own borscht. Different cities have their own borscht. So there is Kyiv borscht and Chernihiv borscht and Lvov borscht. I am making it the way, you know, my grandmother, my mother-in-law used to make it for many, many years. So I am making it the way it was made in our family. Many people in Ukraine made it with pork. I come from Jewish family, so we use only beef. I will show you, I cooked the beef and I strained my broth first. I want to show you the beef. when you buy beef short ribs, try to buy it cut small, because you're supposed to put a piece of meat in a bowl when you serve it. So sometimes they cut it and there are very big pieces. It won't fit in the bowl. It's too much. I also want to show you how soft it is. I cooked it. You see how easily it goes? So my beef is practically cooked. Now I'm starting to put the vegetables in my broth to make it into borscht. And you put vegetables in the order of, you know, how quickly they cook. You first have to dice the onion. One onion, one large onion, I put in the broth when I was cooking, and I discarded it. It is in the recipe.
Was it peeled or was it in?
It was peeled. Okay. It was peeled, yes. And now I'm just slicing the onion. You don't have to do it in any particular way because it's going to cook. And by the time it's like really cooked, you won't feel it. You won't, you know, you won't see it. So there is no way of like, you know,
just not like dicing it or
not necessary to do it like really fancy or anything. It will cook anyway. But onion goes first because you don't, it has to be very soft so that you don't really taste it when you eat it, but it gives good, very good flavor to your borscht. So
Mom,
first,
what's the difference between the borscht in the different cities?
Well, you know, some people put potatoes, some people don't put potatoes. Some people add beans to it. People cook it with different meats. So these are the difference, and they also season it a little bit differently. But basically, you know, borscht is a very, like, you know, hearty feeling meal. Also, if you could see that, you know, in the old times in Ukraine, of course, we didn't have refrigerators. So you use basically the vegetables that could withstand, you know, the winter. So this is beets, potatoes, carrots. These are the main ingredients. So now I'll slice my onion and put in my borscht. I try to make it not very rich. So what I am doing when I skim it, you know, I take most of the fat off. If I'm not in a hurry and I cook it for next day, what I do, I leave the broth in the fridge and then I take off all the fat.
Because that's how I make brisket, so that it's not as fatty.
Yes, because
I make it the day before and then I skim the fat when I serve it.
That's what I do with the borscht very often, but it also depends on the meat. You know, sometimes, you know, short ribs are fatty, sometimes they are not fatty. You know,
and if you didn't want to use short ribs or you couldn't find them, what's another cut of meat that you could use?
Okay, beef shank is very good. It's you know, it's not as fatty. It's very good part of meat. The only thing, it's kind of, you know, harder than beef short ribs, and you have to cook it longer. If this takes like 2.5 hours, if you cook it with beef shank, it will take you 3.5, 4 hours to cook, but it's very good. And also what is delicious, and many people will make this, but what is really delicious is to make it with oxtails. It really comes out very nice. Yes.
So Mom, when you were learning this, you learned this from who in our family?
From your grandma Tasya.
So your mother-in-law?
Yes.
Because your mom is not a great cook.
No, no, okay,
no, just joking. And she doesn't come from Kyiv, she comes from Chernigivskaya Oblast.
Thank you.
So do you think this borscht is different than the borscht they serve in Kyiv?
No, because my grandma used to make it the same way. Okay, next comes the celery. Because celery also takes time to cook.
And you're just slicing it thinly or you're dicing it?
No, I'm just slicing it like this.
Okay.
And these are things which I which must all be done by hand. So there is no like, really fine chopping or anything, anything fancy about it.
And what about summer borscht? So, in the summer we eat borscht with no meat typically.
Yes.
So how do you make that liquid?
Summer borscht is a little bit different. Summer borscht, again, as Kate said, it has no meat. What you do, you boil beets.
Okay. You boil beets.
Yes, you boil beets, and then you let them cool. What you do, you then grate them with the food processor, and you add diced cucumbers, diced scallions, diced radish, and hard-boiled eggs. And you pour over it just boiled water, cold boiled water. And that's how you make the soup. You serve it either with sour cream, or you could mix it with kefir, which is like—
But what's the broth made out of? The water that you boil the beets in?
No, it's just the beets and the water, and the beets, give the taste.
Juice.
Then you have to add, of course, you have to season it. So you add citric acid and you add salt and pepper.
Sort of like what we're doing today.
Yes. And you put it in the fridge because you have to eat it cold. And it's very nice soup.
Okay.
For the summer, it's very nice.
And I'm just admitting people from the waiting room.
Okay. Then comes red pepper.
So red bell pepper.
Red bell pepper. Yes, sweet bell pepper. Again, I just cut it in little cubes. There is no special way to cut it because it's all done by home cooks.
Controversial topic. Why do Americans write borscht with a T on the end? It's technically not correct. There's no T, it's just borscht.
It's borsch. Yes, I have no idea. But it is, it's a good soup, and it has a lot of nutrition because of the vegetables that goes in it. It's also very filling. It is like a meal because you serve it with a piece of meat in it. It normally is like a meal, like, when I serve borscht, we normally eat just salad and then borscht, but we don't eat main course because it's just too much.
And you said that because you're Jewish, you usually cook it with beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or vegetarian, but it could be made with pork. Is there any other type of protein that it's made with?
No, normally it's pork.
So, but green borscht I make in the summer because I love sorrel. And so it's completely different than this. It has sorrel and I make it on a chicken stock. And then I put hard-boiled eggs, and it's weird to eat, borscht in the summer, but sorrel has this sort of like citrusy, refreshing taste. I buy it at the farmer's market. And so I'm typically always making green borscht in the summer, and I really love it. So I told you I'm president of the board of COJECO. I'm also an immigration lawyer, but besides that, I love to cook, which is how this whole thing came about today. And I have a cooking blog on Instagram, which was a pandemic project for me, but I have the recipe for green borscht on there. So if you are interested in that, I would scroll down because it is one of my favorite summer soups.
And one day we could put the recipe for the cold borscht, for the cold red borscht,
Yeah,
the one
that would
with
be
the
great.
beets, because summer started and soon it will be season for really summer borscht, not for this borscht. And it would be great.
Yes, I'm gonna help our camera people for a minute. Our wonderful, how old are you, 12 now? 12-year-old volunteers here. I'm gonna get you a tripod so your iPod doesn't shake.
Wow, she's doing that without an iPod. It's really—
Okay, so now it's time for carrots. I put in the recipe 2 big carrots. I couldn't find big carrots, so I have medium-sized carrots. And, you know, to make life easier, I just use the food processor, and I use this type of attachment, you know, with big.
The big
grater.
shredder.
The big shredder, yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, with the carrots, you can just do it that way. You don't have to take that top off. Right, just that. That's right.
How many people are cooking along with us today? Because if you have questions or you want us to speed up or slow down, the pampushki is hard to make together because of the rise time. So I made several different doughs, to be honest with you. But if you're making borscht and you have questions as we do it, feel free to unmute yourself. And Roman, it's people can talk, right? Nobody's muted except voluntarily. And we have someone else in the waiting room too. Can you check if everyone can ask questions? Thank you. Okay, Mom, while you shred the carrots,
yes,
I want to show my yeast and how it has foamed. So maybe Rena, you can come over here and we can show this because we can proceed to make our dough. So you saw before it was just liquidy and now it's foamed. So show in here, please. You see it's foamed up and it looks like a little bit of a cap almost, like a mushroom cap, but of course it's yeast dough. So if you don't get this when you're using yeast, throw it out, start over. Now I'm gonna start. So the first thing I'm gonna add into my mixer is sunflower oil. Now in the recipe I gave you, I told you that you can use either olive oil or vegetable oil or canola oil, but sunflower oil is traditional, right? Ukraine is the home of sunflowers and it is very traditional and it gives it a very nutty, nice taste. And then I'm gonna go in with salt. And so what I'm gonna try to do here is I'm gonna turn this on low. I have my dough hook attachment. And then I'm gonna use the spoon. By the way, we immigrated with these spoons and I joke with my family about them, but these immigrated with us and I'm 42 years old and we came here 42 years ago. That's how long we've had them here. So anyway, I spoon my flour little bit by little bit. You don't want to pour in 3 cups at once. So when I was learning how to cook and I was in college, I used to ask my grandmother, how do I make blintzes? How do I make borscht? How do I make this? And the answer would always be, eyeball it, eyeball it. I can't give you measurements. I don't even think she knew what a measurement was. And I remember I would get so frustrated because I was a college kid and I didn't know how to eyeball it. What does that mean? But this you have to eyeball a little bit because it's about 3 cups, but I don't want to load it up with flour so that I get a hard, dense piece of bread. I want it to be light and fluffy and delicious. So I am going to go little bit by little bit. And what I do is I periodically stop my stand mixer just to scrape the dough off the sides because I want to make sure that everything gets evenly incorporated. So I'm going to keep adding dough. And then, Mom, it looks like you added your carrots. And now what are you doing?
Carrots. And now I'm just slicing my cabbage.
Okay, don't add it until we see what you're doing.
Okay, so I just, you know, I had, this is like a quarter of the cabbage. So I took a half and a quarter, you know, and again, as Kate was saying, eyeball, I'll see how thick the soup is. And if I need to add a little bit, I'll add. You could do it with the food processor. I'm used to doing it by hand. You don't have to do it too thin. It's like the same thickness as you do for coleslaw. That's how you slice your cabbage. Again, if you want to do it with food processor, great, you know, but I'm just used to doing it by hand, so that's what I'm going to do. And then I'll add it to my soup.
Okay.
My other vegetables are cooking.
Meanwhile, I have gotten my flour in, and so I'm gonna watch it. You see, it's not coming together yet. So I am gonna raise from low now that I have the flour. If I put it in and my mixer was on medium or high, there would be flour all over me and the kitchen. So now I'm gonna put it on medium so that the dough can start kneading. And if I do this by hand, I typically need about 12 minutes. You need to knead it well. With the mixer, it saves me a lot of time. It's about 6 minutes. And frankly, I think it does a better job than my hands sometimes. But I'm really one of these weird people that loves to cook, and I love yeasty dough. I love the smell of it. I love homemade baked goods. So for me, sometimes when I have the time, it's really relaxing to get in there with my hands and do it. And I know that might be a little weird, but we all have our quirks, right? Some people run marathons. I play with dough. So one of my tricks is I have a little extra milk, and you see this dough is a little bit ragged. It's not together in a ball yet. It means it's a little dry. So if I put too much flour, or I can tell my dough is dry, just add a little bit of milk. There's no water in this dough. I don't want to put extra oil at this point. So you see what happened? I had a ragged, shaggy dough, and now I have a ball that's come together, which is exactly what you want for your dough. So I'm gonna let this go, and why don't we switch and show what Mama's doing while I let the dough knead.
I put some cabbage in, and I felt that I need a little bit more, so I'm slicing a little bit more cabbage. So
are you able to hear me?
That's how much is left, so it's a little bit over half a head I used, but it wasn't a big head of
Are you able to hear me?
Cabbage.
Are you able to hear me? No.
And you can see,
So
I'm sorry, and you can see the thickness that it's getting like pretty thick. So the only major ingredient which I need to
right.
is
Mom, can you talk here because the microphone is here?
okay. Now the only major ingredient which is left are my beets. Now beets go last because beets we cooked before. I told you to boil 4 beets uncooked, and you cook them separately in it unpeeled, because this way beets don't lose their color. If you put beets at the same time as all the other vegetables, as your onion, let's say, first of all, beets take a long time to cook, but they lose their color and become like a little bit, not the color of the red wine, but kind of pinkish. So to preserve the color, that's the way you should do it.
Okay.
How much water?
How much water should be?
How much water is in the pot?
Well, I started with about 1.25 gallons, and as my meat was boiling and water was evaporated, I was adding water all the time. I was skimming the broth and I was adding water. So I have about 1 gallon, 1.25 gallons. I have a very big pot, as you could see. Because again, the other good thing about borscht could stay in the fridge for about 4 days. 4, even 5 days, and it becomes even better because all the ingredients, all the tastes come together. So that's why you could really make a big pot and eat it for a few days. That's how I do it. I'm busy. I don't cook every day. I work, so that's what I'm doing.
All right. Before you grate your beets, I want to just show how my dough looks right now. So you heard a loud banging. So that's because I turned it on medium. And when it starts doing this, you can see that it's done. It's a complete ball. It's come together. And this dough, it's a beautiful, glossy, beautiful, elastic dough. I love the way it smells. And I put it into a circle, and I have a bowl here. I put sunflower oil. I know some people are not crazy these days about sunflower oil. It can be inflammatory. And I know I do most of my cooking with olive oil and avocado oil, but sometimes for the traditional taste, you need to use a little bit of sunflower oil. And this makes all of the difference here. So what I did is I put sunflower oil around my bowl. I put it on my dough ball. I'm gonna quickly just wash my hands.
Someone asked how to tell that the beef is ready.
The beef is ready when it falls off the bone.
Okay.
That's always the case with short ribs, whether you're doing it in a borsch or you're just braising them. So I want to show that I'm going to close the dough, and this is very important right now. So forgive me, this might seem obvious if you bake a lot, but if you don't, you want to put it into a bowl, and then you want to airtight close it. And I need to let it rise for an hour or an hour and a half. On top of this, I put a kitchen towel, and then I put it in a warm place because yeast needs heat to rise. So I turned on my oven about 2 hours ago, and ta-da, just like Food Network, I let this dough rise, and I had it covered and I had it near the stove so it got warm. So you can see this beautiful dough, how high it gets. And it's basically more than doubled in size. And it's going to be light and fluffy and so good, but we are going to have to let it rise again. However, first we want to manipulate it to get it into the shape of our pampushki. And look how nice that is, beautiful and fluffy. Now, the great thing about this dough is it does not stick because we put the sunflower oil into the bowl. And so I don't have to put additional flour into it because it's absolutely not sticky. And that's gonna help it be light and fluffy and airy. And so I've rolled it into sort of a log. And the reason I do that is because this is the easiest way for me to form my dough balls. So I cut in the middle with, I have a dough cutter, you can use a knife. And then I cut from here about 4 on each side. And if they're uneven in size, that's okay. I can fix that later. Remember, you're not a store. This is home cooking, and home cooking is beautiful the way it is. It doesn't have to be perfectly uniform. But sometimes like here, I got a thick one, here I got a small one. This is easy to fix. I just slice off a little bit of dough. I add it to this, and then I roll my pampushki into a ball. And then I'm gonna put them into a pan. I have pans that I've lined with parchment paper, and I am going to let them rise again. So we let it rise for an hour, hour and a half, and then we're gonna let it rise for about 20, 25 more minutes before we bake them off. And
30 minutes.
in the interim, I'm just gonna form them into bowls. So Mom, if you wanna show what you're doing with the beets while I do this, that would be great.
Okay, so now it's time to put beets in my borscht, and I'm just using food processor. You could use like regular grater, but this is easier, of course. I have 4 like medium to large size beets.
Shoot.
Oh, right.
You know.
That would be easier, yes. We don't have that attachment?
No, this is an ancient food processor. I showed you how to do that, where you take that thing off, and
Well, that's not
not
easier.
quite as easy. Well, it is easy.
And now I will just add them to the mixture. The borscht will start acquiring color.
That's pretty, Mom.
And
What do you need?
you will see.
I lost my plastic wrap. Can I have it? It's on the chair, please.
The borscht has good color. That's important. We will mix everything in, and while it's cooking, you will see that it will become like this dark red, the color of red wine. That's the way it should be. Remember that it's not seasoned. I didn't put any seasoning yet. going to let the vegetables cook just a little bit, and then we're going to add seasoning. So everything is tender.
Where's your stuff right here?
Yep.
You can see already the color, yeah. It started to get this beautiful, reddish color, but everything else is very raw, so it has to cook.
See?
What I will add now.
Mom, you have to talk here, not there. The sound is over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if you heard me, but the borscht started, getting its beautiful, red color, and the color is very important. Now it's not seasoned yet. I didn't add any seasoning. I didn't add any salt, pepper, vegeta. What I'm going to add now is a little bit of ketchup. You could use tomato paste. I like ketchup because it has the sweetness. And borscht, real borscht is a combination of sweet and sour taste. So I find that ketchup, and of course I started using it only in America, but it gives the right sweetness. So I'm going to add, it should be about 1/4 cup. I think this might be a little bit more. I will add some of it and then I'll taste it. And if I need, in a few minutes, it has to cook a little bit. If I need more, I'll just add more.
While mom's doing that, so I have like an hour till my pampushki are ready, right? Because they have to rise and then I have to bake them off. But I like to make my garlic oil, the topping for it ahead of time. So one important thing to know is I do brush the pampushki with egg wash before I bake them, so they get a beautiful golden brown glaze on top, which is, super appetizing. But if I put the garlic oil on top, then it's likely that the garlic would burn. And you want a strong garlic flavor on the pampushki, and I'll tell you why. Because the borscht, mom's using ketchup, but in Ukraine, they put a little sugar traditionally, right?
Yes.
The beets are sweet, the carrot is sweet, but also we put a little bit of sugar traditionally.
Because when we made it in Ukraine, we used to make it with tomato paste and we would add a little bit of sugar. I found that, ketchup does the trick, but sometimes when it's not like sweet enough, I also add a little bit of sugar. I mean, you have to taste it, but so far my borscht has no seasoning yet. I didn't add anything, So the reason why we eat pampushki with borscht is because the soup has a sweetness. You put sour cream in it, it gives it a sort of creaminess, but you need to cut the flavor a little bit. And the best way to do that is with some raw garlic, which is healthy, which is delicious. You might be a vampire afterwards, but that's okay. And sometimes people take a piece of black bread and they rub raw garlic on it and they eat it that way. Or you can have pampushki, which is a little bit milder flavor, but also very delicious. So it takes time and effort, but it's definitely worth it when you're making something homemade from scratch. It just tastes so good. But I love black bread with garlic rubbed on it. So I'm putting that out there for the record. So I'm making my topping for the pampushki ahead of time because I want the garlic to sort of sit in the oil to really give flavor to it. So again, I have sunflower oil, about 3 tablespoons, and I have 4 chopped garlic cloves. And now I chopped very finely my 2 favorite things, fresh parsley and fresh dill. Now I cook with a lot of fresh herbs because it's super healthy and I just love the fresh flavor. And I know on the cooking blog, some people say to me, you put dill in everything, you put parsley in everything, but I mean, it's so good. So how could I not? So I'm gonna mix the fresh herbs with the sunflower oil, with the chopped garlic, and I have salt. So when I cook with kosher salt. I don't like using iodized salt. I find that it's too salty, and kosher salt gives the right amount of saltiness. So I can sprinkle the salt when I do the egg wash on the pampushki and bake it that way.
or I can add it to my garlic oil, which is sort of what I want to do today. And I'm going to probably start with, I have a teaspoon here. I'm probably going to start with half a teaspoon and see, just eyeball if it's enough. I don't want like a salty bread. And you remember we already added 2 teaspoons of salt to the dough. I just want like a delicious, yummy topping. And I don't put this oil on until it's cooked. So when it comes out of the oven and these are hot dough balls, I'm gonna smother them with this beautiful mixture and they're gonna just get so much flavor. So Mom, what are you doing over there with your borscht?
Okay, now I will start seasoning it. I will finish seasoning it when, when the vegetables are more cooked, but to start, I am adding vegeta. It's a very nice seasoning. I tend to put it in all the soups I make. You could buy it at at any ethnic market, or you could buy it on Amazon. It's really, really good.
It's dried vegetables, essentially.
Yes. Essentially, it's dried vegetables, but it includes salt. So if you use vegeta, you have to be careful with your salt. Put vegeta first, and then, add salt to taste. So I have here, I'll put a few tablespoons. I'll probably put 3-4 tablespoons of vegeta.
And I use vegeta every time I make chicken soup because it gives so much flavor. And I find,
start with this.
Mom, you have to talk over here to the camera. She keeps forgetting.
I'm sorry.
You have to come closer.
Yeah, we'll be next days.
I put 5 tablespoons of vegeta and I use like regular teaspoons. I'm sorry. And then, if I need more, I'll add later. But I want the vegetables to cook a little bit so that I could taste, what flavor we have,
So I want to see while we're seasoning, while we're waiting for the dough to rise, and we might not wait the whole 25 minutes because we still need to bake it. But at home, when you make them, you definitely will. But if you're cooking along with us or you're just watching, ask us any questions you have because, we want to be able to help you. And, these are our family recipes, right? So we make it and it's secondhand to us, but we want to know, if you have questions while we're making it, we're happy to answer them for you. I see we have 2 in the chat. Are they old?
You don't refrigerate this.
Okay.
What? Vegeta?
Vegeta.
Okay.
Just keep dry.
So Mom, I have a question.
Sure.
Once you put in the vegeta, how long is it going to take for it to cook now?
Well, in about 3-4 minutes, I'll taste it and I'll see how salty it is. I'll definitely need to add salt to it.
But how long do you cook it?
With vegeta?
Yeah, right now. Like how much longer does it take to cook?
The borscht or just
The borscht.
the borscht will take, well, until the vegetables are cooked, I think it will take about another 15-20 minutes until all the vegetables are soft, because your carrots and your cabbage have to be so soft.
So from beginning to start, it's probably like a 3-hour process.
Yes, but when you cook the broth is, you just cook the broth. So there is, nothing you have to do. I mean, I was working today. I was cooking the broth. I was coming downstairs a few times to skim it, add water, and going back to my computer. So you really do all the work in the last like 30-40 minutes. When you slice the vegetables, you put it together, you season it. That's all.
Excellent.
Well,
if you're going to be done in 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and put some egg wash. Obviously, these have not risen enough because if we gave them the proper rise time, you could see they've started though. They would be much taller, puffier, bigger. But we don't want to keep you online all night with us watching dough rise. So this is sort of the process. Make the dough, let it rise for an hour and a half, warm place, covered. Second time, roll balls, let them rise a little bit. And we are now going to put egg wash on that. And we are going to get them in the oven. Would they be prettier, fluffier, more delicious if we had the time? Yes, definitely. And that's what you should do when you make this on your own. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them for you about the pampushki. But even now, I mean, it's been like what, 10 minutes? Not even. You can see how big they've gotten. And I did make these ones in the middle a little bit smaller to fit them in. But probably if we had more time, we could make them exactly the same size and uniform. But again, we're cooking at home, and the name of the game is rustic cooking here. So one note about egg wash is I beat 2 eggs here, but to my egg wash, I always, when I'm making dough, add about a teaspoon of water to thin out the egg. And I'm just doing a little tiny sprinkle of salt. And now I'm gonna get them in the oven. 350, 20 minutes, and then we'll see, maybe they need 25. So your borscht will be ready before my pampushki, Mom.
I'm not sure because, I think, it wasn't, it was not cooking high enough, so.
Do you want to cover it so it goes quicker, or you don't suggest doing that?
Normally I cook it open, but we can do it so that it goes faster. We can do it.
And why do you cook it open? Usually when I make soup, I cover it, I bring it to a boil, then I put it on low and I let it cook on a low simmer. So why are you cooking it open?
That's the way I was taught. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but
so you just do what's been done.
I'm just like following the way I was taught. The same as when I make chicken soup, I always cook it open because your grandma used to say, never ever cover it. It was like the biggest sin to cover chicken soup when you're cooking
I'm a sinner. I always cover my chickens.
I never do, because again, I just follow the orders.
And I think I never paid attention to if you do that or not until just now.
You know what I also need? I need parsley because at the very end we put parsley.
Okay,
so you could give me parsley. So let me be ready. I tasted my borscht and it's definitely not salty. So I have a few more teaspoons of vegeta here, like 2 more. I'm going to put all of them because I like, the flavor it gives. It's salt plus, plus all these dry vegetables. I like the way it seasons the soup.
So Mom, where do you buy vegeta for people who've never cooked with it?
Well, I buy it.
You have to talk on this side. I'm just going to keep reminding her all night.
Vegeta is sold in, I think, all ethnic markets. I buy it in the Russian market and Turkish market.
Wow.
But I think you could buy it on Amazon.
Yes,
I think you can buy it on Amazon. I'm not sure if you could buy it in a regular supermarket. Honestly, I never looked because I just when I go to Turkish or Russian store, I just buy it and I always have it. But I'm sure it exists on Amazon. It's a really good seasoning for all your soups. I put it in my chicken soup also, but then I strain it so that it doesn't have these little particles. I have to tell you that I strained this broth also with the cheesecloth, because I like my broth to be very, very, clean, transparent without any impurities. So I have cheesecloth and I strain vegetables.
Wow, that really does give it a lot of
You put your parsley at the very end, when borscht is ready.
And how much do you need?
From a bunch to half a bunch, it's a big pot I could use, because it kind of dissolves, in the borscht and you don't see it, but it gives a nice, a nice flavor.
Mom, so growing up, you ate a lot of borscht.
I ate a lot of borscht.
Ukraine.
Yes.
What else was typical
potato pancakes called draniki.
Yes.
That was a very typical, that's very typical Ukrainian dish.
Draniki, potato pancakes.
Yes, it's potato pancakes with onion and garlic, and you made meat with them. I also ate lots of salad made.
Hold on 1 second. I think we're having
You
just
just
some,
click on Zoom. Just click that.
Which one?
Just click the
okay.
Zoom icon.
We're just maximizing the Zoom again.
There?
Zoom icon. Zoom.
Okay, there we are.
Okay, sorry.
So you ate draniki, potato pancakes.
Yes, then I ate a lot of, we didn't eat much meat because meat and chicken was very expensive. So you ate a lot of, food with vegetables, which are very filling. Lots of, there is a salad which is called vinaigrette, which is a combination of cooked potatoes, cooked beets, cooked carrots, pickle.
It's one of my favorite salads.
Green peas, then of course sunflower oil and vinegar. And it's really, you also put there sometimes sauerkraut, not only pickles, but sauerkraut. But it's a very good salad and it's very filling. I mean, Ukraine was not a rich country ever. And meat was very expensive. So I remember my grandma buying a chicken and making a few things with it. She would cut the bones and make chicken soup with it. And then out of chicken breast, she would make like chicken cutlets. And then she would take the skin off and stuff it. And it was called shaker. You stuff it with a combination of flour and fried onion, and then
I remember grandma making that when I was little.
Yes, you cook it with onions, and then she would make out of the bottom leg, she would make what they call zherkoya, which is like a chicken stew with lots of young potatoes. Again, like everything included potatoes, because potatoes were cheap and potatoes were filling, and that's what you wanted to do. But she made like 5-6 dishes out of one chicken because it was really, really expensive for us. She also made a lot of things with dough. She made a lot of things with dough.
Maybe that's why I like dough so much.
She baked a lot. And the reasons were, again, because baked goods are very, very filling, the person is not hungry after he eats something like Pampushki or whatever. Or she would make very nice, like little potato pies, like dough filled with potatoes and fried onion,
which are
dumplings with cherries. She would make
those are so good with sour cherries.
Yes, she would make a lot of baked things. Also, we didn't have bakeries where you could buy like really good, cakes and pastry and everything. So people baked.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So should we check the borsch and see how it's coming along?
Okay.
How do you spell Pampushki?
P-A-M-P-U-S.
Okay. So for those cooking at home, this is where we are right now. You see the broth has become really red. I think we're going to keep cooking it because, we're going to keep going until everything becomes this beautiful, bright red ruby color. Even this cabbage that right now is whitish green is going to become beautiful ruby red, and the flavor really develops. So when I cook with things like tomato paste or ketchup, I let them cook for a while because the flavors need to develop in order to give sort of that hint of sweetness and acidic that you get from tomato paste or ketchup, right?
Yes. Now I tasted my borscht and it really needs salt and it needs acid. So this is citric acid.
That's right.
You could use a regular lemon. You could buy citric acid, in any Russian market. This I bought in Turkish market. Again, but I'm sure that again.
And you say Russian market, but obviously we mean Eastern European market.
Yes,
because we're cooking for Ukraine.
Yes, and
we just call it that because we're used to it.
This is from Turkish market, but again, you could buy it on Amazon, I'm sure. Or you could just squeeze part of the lemon, just make sure that no seeds get into your
So
borscht.
why are you using this when I have some fresh lemons right here? What's the
Because
advantage of it? Or is it just ease? Or is it again because your grandma taught you that way and that's what you do?
That's the way I was using it my whole life. I would use lemon only when I don't have citric acid. You know, it also, I think it's a little bit more acidic. I think it gives you a slightly different flavor than the lemon. And you know,
somebody is telling us, James and Judy is telling us they made their own pampushki ahead of time and they came out beautiful and they want to show everybody. Please show us. We would be so happy to see them. Can we share screen, Roman, or?
We can share screen.
We can share screen. 1 second while the tech savvy people help us.
Okay, meantime, you know, I put some citric acid just in my hand and I'm going to put it in my borscht and then see how much more I need.
Oh my God, those are gorgeous. Beautiful. They're really nice.
Wow. Congratulations. Beautiful.
Yeah.
You're teaching class, okay?
No, you guys.
That's really delicious.
guys
That's
are
going to go
amazing.
delicious, I think, with the borscht. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I don't even need to show mine anymore because they didn't have the time to rise and they're not going to look as beautiful as that. But that's the whole idea, is when you bake them, they sort of come together and then you pull apart this beautiful fluffy bread. And I'm just so excited that they came out so nice. It's wonderful to see that. Okay, so how much citric acid did you put?
Well, I just like, you know, eyeballed it, but, you know, I wrote in a recipe because when I was making it at home, you know, I never measured at home. Like for this recipe was the first time that I actually measured because I just, you know, the way again, I was taught, you know, do it, see how it tastes and add things. So I added a little bit, I'll add more because it's definitely not enough, but.
So it's definitely a process.
It's
right?
a process. It's about a quarter of a teaspoon you need.
And what do you try? So if you've never cooked borscht before and you have eaten it, but not as often as, you know, we do, for example, what's the taste profile that you're looking for?
It should be a combination of sour and sweet taste. Sour and sweet, and, you know, I add pepper because I like it a little bit, you know, spicier.
Hear that?
But that's what you're looking for. So with this, it might have enough sourness. I also need salt. So I will start with 1 teaspoon of salt, and again, it will cook for a minute, and I'll just taste it if it's enough or not enough.
Right. So I hope you're enjoying these recipes, and we're absolutely enjoying this with you. We also wanted to know, and you can feel free to respond in the chat. Do I have flour on my face? That's okay, I'm a cook. If you wanted us to share some more family recipes with you, one of the things that we were thinking about doing as a follow-up was to do another fundraiser for learning how to do chicken Kyiv. And I think a lot of people know what that dish is, but it's, you know, chicken stuffed with the beautiful, again, garlic, butter, herbs, and cooked really well. So it's something we really, really like. I think a lot of times we see it made and it's not done the right way, the authentic way. And so if you're interested in that, just send us a message in the chat or let us know, because we'd be happy to do that. And obviously, we really want to support Ukraine whichever way we can. COJECO, for those that don't know, has been doing a lot of work helping. So we have been raising funds and we have been sending medicines to Ukraine, loading them in cars on the border, sending it in. We help to evacuate people. We help to deliver food packages for Passover to people in need. in Ukraine. We have been supplying all kinds of things to refugees. We're working on the border, helping to intake people, seeing what assistance they need, helping to process paperwork for Ukrainians that are now transitioning on their way to Israel. So whatever we can do, we will keep doing it to help the people of Ukraine. And COJECO and our leadership in COJECO is super committed for as long as this war lasts and for afterwards, when it's time to rebuild and resettle. And we are going to help as well for any arriving people into the US to help provide professional trainings, to help with basic needs. You know, they can just turn to us and we will help to point them in the right way, arrange for assistance, and we will do everything that we can to help the people of Ukraine.
I need some more salt.
You need some more salt.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go.
Really, maybe.
To add to what Katya said, I really, really want to thank everybody who came and who supports Ukraine. It's the place I was born. It's the place I love. And what's happening to it, it's absolutely heartbreaking and painful. And people who are going through this, they don't deserve it. So let's try to support them in any way we can. Thank you. I will add another teaspoon of salt, and then after it cooks for a little bit, I'll taste it again to see if it's enough. But you know, in my recipe, I put 5 or 6 teaspoons of salt, and I might end up with the same. It depends, you know, tastes different. Some people like their food saltier, some people like it less salt, but you know, I put already 1 teaspoon. I'll put 2 more, and then we will see how it goes.
Well, thank you for telling us. Thank you for what we're doing. You know, we're very committed to it. And, you know, as I said, most of us are from there, originated there, touched there. But even if you're not from Ukraine, I think just as a human being, you can't help but not be impacted by what's going on. It's truly terrible. So as I mentioned, I'm also an immigration lawyer. And I have been working with a lot of Ukrainians here to file for CPS and those overseas who are filing United for Ukraine parole petitions. So, you know, I'm seeing a lot of these people firsthand. I'm hearing a lot of these stories firsthand. And as Mom said, they don't deserve this. It's truly, truly terrible what people are going through. Completely heartbreaking. And, you know, most of these people that we're filing for are women and children because the men have been left behind. And so these families have been just torn apart. And that's very sad and it's undeserved. And so, as I said, we'll keep doing everything in our power to help in any way we can. Cooking, immigration applications, raising money, medicine, whatever it is, we're going to do it.
Okay, I tasted my borscht and I think it needs more sweetness and it needs more salt. So I'm going to put my remaining ketchup there and I'm going to add a couple of 2 more teaspoons of salt. I put already 3, I'll put 2 more, so it will be 5 as I have in my recipe.
Okay, we're almost getting ready to eat. I think we're almost there, right, Mom?
Well, the vegetables are not ready yet.
But not that much.
Not much, but they need to be
longer
softer than they are. And so I added 2 more teaspoons of salt, and now I'll add some pepper.
I have these fancy electronic pepper grinders. If you're wondering what this spaceship design looks like, I like them a lot. Excellent. So one time at COJECO, we did a lot of Zoom programs when COVID was going on. Every Tuesday, we have an amazing Hebrew educator. He does lectures and he invites guest lecturers to also contribute. And so wow, we had a woman who was a PhD from the Sorbonne, and she was a PhD in Ashkenazi Jewish food and the history of how Ashkenazi Jewish food developed. And it was super interesting to listen to her because she talked a lot about sort of things that we're just talking in our kitchen about. How did Borsh develop and how did the Jews cook it differently than the ethnic Ukrainians in Ukraine, and why is it different, right? Obviously, there are traditions of being kosher, and when you go back a few generations, people were religious, right? And they lived together in areas, and that was sort of historic because of the Pale of Settlement and the way, history developed. But also it's very interesting to sort of study the differences and how the foods developed and how they became traditional and how people adapted. And one of the things she talked about was borsch and how it's cooked completely different in Ukraine, in regions of Ukraine, like we just said, versus it's spread to the Baltic states. And eventually, how did it come to America through immigrants, especially coming in the early 1900s, bringing it, and how they also changed their tastes over time. So it's a super interesting topic and one that, is fascinating to sort of study, which is the history of cuisine. But borsch traditionally is Ukrainian, and Ukrainian food, I think is very well known as a delicious cuisine. There's a lot of baked goods, there's a lot of sour cherry, there's a lot of beets, all the doughy things, the dumplings, they're puffy, they're airy, they're pillowy, and they're really nice to make. I know for myself, I really like to make them with my daughter, and we'll make a big, huge batch and freeze them in batches. And we do it as sort of a project because people in our family have done that for so many generations, and I like to continue those traditions with her. So and now it's nice to cook with you too, Mom, because usually I'm cooking with her. But it's so nice to cook with you. I think the borsch is boiling, and it's really starting to smell good in this kitchen.
It has to cook a little bit more because the cabbage is not soft enough yet, so it has to cook a little bit more. But in a minute, I'll add parsley to it. But what's good about it, that for the first time, you made me write the recipe. So it might actually,
well, this is actually, when we talk a lot about these recipes being passed down, well, like with Grandma, I never got to learn, for example, how she made her cabbage blintzes because she was like, eyeball it. And so I never learned. And it's important. I think you should put them together.
When I have time.
When you have time.
When I have time, yes. Yes, no, but it was nice, because now we can give this recipe to your daughter, and she will know at least that that's your great grandmother's, recipe.
Yeah. And it's not easy to write it down, right?
No, because I never noticed what I put there. I was just like, doing it.
I know, because when I started my cooking blog, me too, now I have to think about every I put in and write it down. But once you start thinking that way, it becomes second nature, but it's challenging at first. I'm going to check the pampushki because I hear my oven beeping. Oh, they're getting beautiful, but they're not quite there yet. But they have definitely puffed up. Don't blame yourself, Rena. Our amazing helper today you know, is diving into the oven. But being the Jewish mama that I am,
It's weird.
I want her to be careful. But I do want to just say, when you start to smell the bread, when you start to smell the borscht, this is how you know we're getting close to the end of the cooking session here, because when it starts to smell, it's almost ready, right?
It's almost ready, yes. But it's also like the smell. I love the smell of like home cooking. I love, you know, when do you remember there was a time when we lived together and they used to come home and you would cook and the whole house smelled food, and it's such a great feeling.
You're saying you miss having me cook.
No, but it was such a great feeling when you come home and it smells like food, and it means that someone waited for you, you know, someone wanted, you know, to do something nice for you. And I just love the house, when house smells, you know, like home food. It's a completely different feeling.
I agree with you. I mean, this is one of the great things about COVID is we all got to spend so much more time at home with our families. And I know for me, I've always loved to cook and I've always done a lot of it, but I had the opportunity to really let things boil on the stove for 3-4 hours, which I never used to have during the week before COVID. And so, you know, COVID's horrible, but we have to look at the pluses, and some of the pluses is that we definitely all got more family time. And I think for me, that's what cooking is all about. I mean, that's sort of why I love to cook. It brings people together. Everyone is happy. And it's always such a vehicle for gatherings. And of course, family, right? Because I know for me, when I cook something and I see a big smile on my daughter's face, there's nothing better. Or she'll come home and she'll say, Mom, I was dying for this. Last week, I'll tell you a funny story. I made a soup in the morning before going to work. I got up at like 5:30 a.m. to take my puppies out. I have 2. And I decided to cook a soup, and she woke up and she said, Mom, I want your soup for breakfast. And I said, you can't eat chicken meatball soup in the morning. And she said, no, I want it for breakfast. So that sort of thing is always special.
I need a little bit of sugar for my borscht.
Okay.
Yes, go back to old times.
Getting a really beautiful color.
Wow. Oh, wow.
So why do you think you needed sugar after adding the ketchup?
You know, it wasn't like sweet enough. You know, it was like a little bit too sour for me. There wasn't right balance of sweetness and sourness. So that's why I added a little bit of sugar. If I had more ketchup, I probably would have added a little bit more ketchup. But, you know, whatever, you know, sugar is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and there's a minute for my Pampushki left, and I have our plates ready for taste testing. I'm just going to get a ladle. Okay, I think the vegetables need to cook a little bit, but that's okay. Just a little bit more. No, we're going to get it perfect. I mean, Mom, this is your borscht. That's why we're here, to get it perfect. So, Rena, do you make borscht at home? All the time. Wow, come here. Tell us on camera.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. So tell us, you make borscht all the time by yourself?
Not by myself. Well, Baba used to make it more often. Grandma used to make it a lot of the time. Not too much anymore, but every now and then, Mama makes a good, warm, sweet and sour borscht. And
your parents are from Ukraine too, right?
Yes.
And Grandma too?
Yes.
What city, do you know?
Mama's from Kyiv. Papa, well, complicated.
Complicated, yes.
Because it's from Crimea. And it's from Crimea,
yeah,
which is like,
and it's disputed.
Russia, Ukraine. It's
well,
like,
we're gonna, for purposes of today,
okay,
stick with Ukraine.
Okay. Ukraine. But it's, yeah. Okay.
It is
Where's-
complicated though. I like
Baba's
that
also from-
answer for
Baba's also from
you.
Kyiv. Yeah, Grandma's also from Kyiv.
So good.
The second side of the
Second
family
side
is
of the
from
family-
Belarus.
That side of the family is from Belarus.
And they make borscht too?
yes,
Yeah.
everyone
Because
makes
it's popular
borscht.
throughout the region.
Well, borscht is good. So who doesn't want borscht?
That's true. That's
So,
true.
so basic question.
That's a very
Who
good
doesn't want
attitude. That's a good attitude.
Yeah. It's good. It's warm, and when it's a cold winter day, you have some, and you feel better right away. So it's
And
good.
it's very nutritious. It has many good vegetables. It's really
Yes.
nutritious.
Very good.
Okay, I'm just gonna cook my pampushki for about 3 more minutes too.
Yes, and I think borscht needs like another also, like around
3 more
3
minutes?
Yeah, 3-5 minutes, not more than that. Yeah,
Excellent.
but you don't want, cabbage to be too crunchy. The vegetables should be soft and they all turn red.
Yes, that's key. I think the color is the most amazing thing. I think probably if it wasn't this beautiful ruby red color, it maybe would have not become as popular as it did. I mean, it's so identifiable as a soup, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And it's very, very nutritious because it has all these vitamins and all these vegetables. So,
well, beets are super healthy. They do have a high sugar content, but they have a lot of nutrients. Cabbage, obviously, is super healthy.
cabbage, carrots, bell pepper, onions, like everything there is very nutritious. So it's very nutritious soup. It's very good for you.
I don't mind any of the crunch. It's so fucking tasty.
If you want it to be like, even more filling and thicker, a lot of people add potatoes. In my family, they didn't add potatoes, so I don't do it. But many friends, add potatoes to borscht. And also, many women cook borscht. They all cook it a little bit differently, and every one of them is convinced that her way is the only right way. I cook the way I was taught. I don't deviate from the recipe. So I can tell you that that's the way, that is right, but that's the way it has been done in our family probably for the last 100 years.
Now you mentioned people put beans in. If
Yes.
they put beans in, what kind of beans? Red beans?
No, they put like big white beans.
What are they called?
White bean, the white beans, the big ones.
Like a cannellini type of bean?
No, the bigger ones.
A bigger one, like a
bigger.
lima bean.
Yes,
Lima
like a
bean.
lima bean, and they cook it together, because it takes very long time to cook. So they put it together with the meat, basically. It takes very long time, but then your borscht becomes like really, really heavy food.
She also.
I actually have never tried it with beans, so
I
it's
did.
interesting.
I did many times, and it's good, but it's very heavy.
Yeah.
It makes it like a very heavy meal, and the way, I cook and, we cook in our family, it's not such a heavy meal. I mean, it's filling, but it's not very heavy. It's also less fattening if you don't put potatoes, if you don't put, beans in it, it's less fattening. It's not a fattening food, especially since I skim all the fat from the top.
You put potatoes and everything else, and the vareniki, and the жирко, and the vinaigrette.
That's true. That's yes. But again, it's poor man's food. You have to remember that Ukrainians were poor. So their recipes, they were all filling, and they were made with like relatively cheap ingredients, available in cheap ingredients.
Okay, so I have my pampushki out of the oven. They would be taller, they would be fluffier if I had let them rise fully the second time. But we are on camera, we can't keep people here all night, and they are still going to be delicious. And I'm putting my garlic and my parsley and dill mixture with that fragrant sunflower oil on when it's hot. Now, I should wait about 15 minutes before eating this. And the reason is that we want them to cool down so nobody gets burned, but also the hot pampushki is sort of soak in that flavor of the garlic, of the sunflower oil. And I have that kosher salt in here as well. It's just gonna have a ton of flavor. This is gonna be so good with the sweet borscht. My 11-year-old is making an appearance. I apologize. She is very excited by hot bread.
It smells good.
Yeah. It smells good. Yes. Okay.
Yes, it really smells
I'm
good.
excited by hot
Guys, I
bread.
wish you could smell this. It is like heaven in here, my God.
I mean, American raised kids loving pampushki and borscht. I love it.
Who doesn't?
Well, this is what it's all about, family, right? All right, so this is our pampushki. I do think that, James, yours came out much prettier than mine today. So kudos to you. Were they tasty?
Oh, God, yes.
Hold on.
I think you might be muted.
Maybe he'll type it in the chat.
How can we unmute?
Yeah, we have something in the chat.
Why?
Who isn't excited by hot bread? Very true. Very true. Very true. All right, I'm gonna let these cool. Guys, I know you're excited, but you have to let them cool and not burn yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, Mom, do you wanna see if the borscht is ready?
We are eating it all right now, Heaven.
You're eating it.
They think we're muted, but we're not, according to me.
Okay, she's gonna do a taste test. She's a perfectionist to make sure that it's ready, but the color is right. And so we're so glad to see you guys eating, and we're gonna have our dinner soon too. Good, Mama?
Yes, it could cook a little bit more, but it's fine. You could cook.
Okay.
Now, when you serve borscht,
Why don't we show how you spoon it?
Yes.
On the bowl
when
for
you serve borscht, you normally put a teaspoon of sour cream in it. Again, you know, people who were religious, they were eating it without sour cream. Like my mother-in-law would never put sour cream into borscht, but I always put sour cream in my borscht. So you put just a little bit, you know, like this.
Mm-hmm.
You put it in borscht and you put a piece of meat in it. You could see that there is.
Marina's over here. She can
Mhm.
take
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, you could see that there is a piece of meat in it, and that's how you serve your borscht.
Perfect.
The sour cream is dissolved in the borscht, and it's ready to eat.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Again, we're very grateful for all the support for Ukraine, and COJECO is going to keep doing everything that we can. Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
night.
very much for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you.